and welcome to The Nation. Thanks for joining me, Tamina Kauji, coming to you live from the Banama News Channel studios. Now, this is another episode of The Nation, and as we draw closer towards the end of the year, it is time to take stock of many things. Amongst those are always New Year's resolutions. So I think amongst those, generally we work about things to do with our health, and one thing that may not really come up on your radar, but it really should be, is the health of your eyes. So with regards to that, today we have in the house with us Dr. Peter Chong Kwok Seong, who is a consultant eye surgeon, and our topic of the day is dry eyes. Now, this might sound like it's something a little bit staid, but trust me, with all of us logged onto our digital devices day in, day out, and I mean everybody all the way from toddlers to the elderly, we're definitely in for a little bit of a dry eye crisis, but Dr. Peter is here to tell us all about it. Dr. Peter, welcome to studios. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Dr. Peter. So, Dr. Peter, let's get started off by you sharing with our audience what actually is dry eye.
Okay, so dry is actually a very simple disease. But I'm a simple man, so normally I try to explain things very simple.
Okay, that'd be great, especially if it's something medical. We don't want to have too much of jargon, right?
So in general, put it simply, the tears are being produced by a gland at the corner of our eye, and it's called lacrimal gland.
Okay.
And the lacrimal gland basically secretes a specific amount of tears throughout the whole days. And when you have a disease affecting the lacrimal gland, and there's a reduce in the production of the tears,
right,
and therefore this will lead to dry eye. Right? Now, assuming the tear has got abnormalities, because the tear film consists of 3 layers, which basically consists of the lipid layer, the aqueous layer, and the mucin layer. Now, there are some diseases that affect the lipid layer, like for example, in meibomian gland diseases. The tears will not remain stable in front of our eye. So the tears will get dry out very fast, and this will classify as an evaporative dry eye disease. So in general, there are 2 main groups. One is the too little production from the lacrimal gland. Another one is because the tears get evaporated very fast. So this dry eye disease.
So each of those could lead to dry eye disease themselves.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about dry eye, how would you know as an individual that you're perhaps on the way to having dry eye, or you're already suffering from dry eye disease?
So in my practice, the only group of patients that do not have dry eye, I would say, are babies.
Oh, wow. So okay, let me reiterate that.
Yes.
The only group of patients who don't have that is babies. Meaning which basically all of us have some degree of dry eye.
You can have grittiness in your eyes, foreign body sensation, uncomfortable feeling in your eyes. Sometimes you get your lids got stuck together when you wake up in the morning.
Okay,
or sometimes you feel your eyes are tearing a lot. Or sometimes you feel a little bit of itch. All these are signs and symptoms of dry eyes. So it's very common, especially in our day and age of technology and digital era,
Right. Okay. So now definitely if any of those symptoms sounds familiar to our audience out there, and I bet you everybody identifies with at least one of those things.
Yes.
So
definitely.
that means we all have dry eye.
Yes, that is absolutely right.
Right. So now, aside from, I'm sure the discomfort which a lot of us, suffer from the moment we wake up, you feel that your eyes are itchy, they're not lubricated enough. What other ramifications can it have in your everyday life if you have your dry eye and you're not, looking to fix it in any way?
I think in all diseases, the first thing is prevention. So therefore, I always tell my patients, lifestyle modification is the number 1 criteria they must look at. So if you look at computers all the time, a lot of handphones, a lot of smartphones, and you're always at the office, under the air-conditioned room, all those are very significant risk factors. So I always tell my patients, if you have, you have work, you're always exposed to computers. I mean, you can't avoid it because of the nature of your work. But when you're at home, when you're supposed to relax, try not to, log into your Facebook or play with your phones or watch TVs at home too excessively. And for those with the contact lens wearers, then obviously you got to wear it not too long. If you wear it for 8 hours already, and if you're back from work, then try wear back glasses. Don't continue and wear contact lens, and this will predispose your eye to develop dry eyes very evidently.
Right. Okay. Now, I would assume that a vast majority of those who are working corporate jobs, or they are, doing their regular 9 to 5, and who wear contact lenses would generally be removing them before they go to bed.
Yes.
Now, what are some of the risk factors involved, Dr. Peter, if we do not take care, any precautions? You have dry eye, it causes you a fair bit of inconvenience, but you're just going about your daily business like nothing's going to happen. What are the long-term impacts potentially?
Dry eye is a very miserable disease to have. Now, if you don't have dry eye or you have a very minor form of dry eyes, normally you don't feel it. But if you have very severe form of dry eyes, it's actually very miserable. Whenever you go to somewhere with air-conditioned room, then you feel your eyes very painful, your eyes start to become red, and you start to tears, you're unable to look at your phones, you can't see people clearly because when the tears get dry up, the vision drops. So if you ask me what is the most severe side effects of dry eye, basically you lose your vision.
Oh, wow. Okay. So have you, in your career insofar as a consultant eye surgeon, come across someone who has actually lost their vision or a significant loss to vision because of dry eye?
90% of patients who come to see me in eye specialist because they start to lose their vision.
Yeah.
Because dry eye is a very simple disease. So in layman's term, when they have just a little bit of discomfort, normally they just buy over-the-counter drops and they just put it. When they feel better, they don't see doctors. But when they start seeing eye specialists, right? So that means there's something wrong with their eyes. So normally the commonest signs is because they start to lose their vision or something they don't see clearly. Or sometimes these people, their age is starting to start, probably around 40 or 45, and they're starting to become presbyopic. And they start to lose their near vision coupled with dry eyes, and then they start to develop astinopia, or we call it eye fatigue syndrome.
Okay, astinopia. Now,
Yes.
what does astinopia typically present itself as?
They will always complain that their eyes are always very fatigued. They always want to sleep. They always want to close their eyes. Sometimes they get headache. Sometimes when they can't stay long at the computers, they can't stay long at their PCs. They can't do their work. Sometimes when they drive at night, their eyes are very sensitive to lights. Daytime, when the sun is bright and they don't wear sunglasses, they feel that they can't open their eyes when they're under hot sun. So these are the group of patients who complain of eye fatigue syndrome.
Right. Okay. So that entire umbrella is also perhaps symptomatic of leading up to dry eyes as well.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we speak about contact lens wearers, and also let's talk about those using digital devices, which is basically everybody out there, whether or not they wear contacts.
Yep.
So why do these two factors in particular increase your risk of, advancing in dry eye disease?
Okay. No. So here there are two separate things. First
Okay.
is contact lens. Now, contact lens is something that's foreign to your eye. It's not natural. So you're putting some polymer in front of your eyes, and you put it 8 hours a day.
Minimum,
at least,
I think.
Yes, at least 6 days in a week. That's assuming the patient take off the contact lens after 8 hours. Most of the time, they wear at least 10 or 12 hours.
Correct.
So the foreign body is sitting right in front of your eyes. So basically, this causes additional friction to your ocular surface, means your eyeball. Yeah. So coupled with the nature of your work, where you look at the computers, TVs. So the problem is when we tend to focus or give attention to our work, we tend to blink less.
I see.
So this is the second element. So you have a foreign body in your eye, and you blink less. The tear volume remains, assuming you are a healthy patient, you're a healthy person, assuming the tear volume remains the same. You are in an environment with air condition, so therefore the tears get dry up even faster. So a couple of these factors, normally these group of patients will develop dry eye. 100%.
Okay, 100%.
100%.
Now, so that would be to do with those who are wearing contact lenses. So
Even
would
without
you-
contact lens wear,
Okay.
in our day and age, air-conditioned room, persistent computer works, TVs, you will develop dry eye.
So how would you actually go about? Is there a cure for dry eye?
You can
Or-
prevent it.
Okay.
20, 30 years ago, I mean, in the era of my parents or my grandfathers, when people are working in the normal day-to-day work,
Right.
under a normal environment, not under air-conditioned room. So the prevalence of dry eye during the era is definitely much less as compared to now. Yeah. So I always tell my patients, if can, try not to stay in the house or in your office. So whenever you go back and it's time for you to do exercise, go out of your house, right? Try to stay away from PCs or TVs, especially children. If your children, if you lock them in the house, what do? They'll be looking at TV, watching TV, playing phones, So the only way to break this cycle is take them out of the house, look at trees, bring them to parks, and this would really, really help if you have dry eye symptoms.
Right. So now let's focus a little bit on children with dry eyes. Have you actually had parents bringing in their children, coming to you where the child is, in a way, not really able to explain why they are in discomfort, and it's led up to be dry eye?
Right.
And how do you help to reverse that? Because actually nowadays we see more and more children, I think especially Asians, as we are also genetically predisposed to myopia, wearing really thick glasses at a very young age.
I think there's a misnomer, there's a misconception that children develop dry eyes. So in my practice, most of the time, patients who come and see me, children, we're talking about children population,
Okay.
10 years and below, Children at their age, patients, they are normally brought in by their parents because of two reasons. First, either the child can see very well, or the teacher complains the child always copy wrongly with their homeworks, or the child tends to blink their eyes. Tend to blink their eyes
Constantly.
Yes,
yeah.
constantly, or they're always squeezing their eyes,
Right.
or more severe forms tend to rub their eyes. So normally I tell the mother or the father who brings the child in, I say 99% of the time, the child is either having some form of refractive errors, or the child is having allergy. Now, when you have
Okay.
developed eye allergy, the child also can develop dry eye symptoms. So I always tell my
see.
patients, dry eye and eye allergy, they are good friends. If you have eye allergy, you will develop dry eye. If you have dry eye, you will also develop some form of eye allergy.
Right, okay, so it can go hand in hand. So
Yes.
how often or when would be a good time when you would recommend for parents to bring in their kid to come and see you, just to be
So
safe?
yes, so it's just basically a very simple logic. So if you notice your child always sitting very close in front of the TVs or
Right.
computers, and when the child starts squeezing the eyes like this,
Okay,
that is a very significant sign that you, as a parent, you should pick this up, and you must bring this child as soon as possible, either to see eye specialist or optical shop.
right.
So when the child starts to squeeze the eye, that means the power of the eye has gone up significantly, right? They can't see very well if they open the eyes wide and open. That's number one. Number two, if the child starts to rub their eyes or the child starts to blink their eye excessively, like this, this again is a very abnormal signs and symptoms that you must bring them to see eye specialist.
Right, okay.
Right.
So on that note, time for a quick commercial break. We'll be back right after. Please do stay tuned for more on dry eye in everybody, adults, children, and everyone in between. Thanks. Thanks for still being with us here on The Nation. So today we are with Dr. Peter Chong, consultant eye surgeon, speaking about dry eye disease. So Dr. Peter, as we were saying, now can dry eye be cured? And you were suggesting and recommending that we spend more time outdoors looking at nature. But in this day and age, that is really perhaps something which most people get to do only on the weekends. So what about during the week when you really don't have time? What can you do to maintain eye health?
Okay, dry eye disease, basically it's a curable disease. But then, like you mentioned, because of the nature of your work, you tend to stay in the office and you tend to look at the computers most of the time. So a lot of times it's actually not curable because the nature of what we're doing every day, right?
Yeah,
So
the habit is already
the habit
formed.
is there. So in order to minimize it, normally I'll tell my patients, try to adjust the contrast and the brightness of TV screens or the computer screens as to reduce glare in your eyes. Perhaps you can put a pot of flower or some greeneries on the table, something that you can de-stress your eye a bit instead of looking at the PCs, 8 hours a day. And then of course, if the dry eye symptoms still persist, then you need to opt for eye drops then, yeah?
Right.
Yes.
Now, eye drops, of course, I think we've all seen the variety grow exponentially over the years in the pharmacy area. Are there any particular type that patients should go towards, or those that perhaps they should avoid excessive usage of? What is actually excessive usage of eye drops? And that could tell you, okay, I definitely have to get going and see the specialist.
Okay, as in general, you can easily buy artificial tears from the counter or from the pharmacy, yeah. And just like any form of treatment or even technology, things evolve with time. So we first started off with just not some normal saline drops, and then they improve the content of the medication in the teardrop bottles, yeah, to become natural or synthetic polymers. And then now they added in materials like hyaluronic acid. And then there are even newer compounds with ionic emulsions. Now the latest, which we call the 5th generation artificial tears.
Right.
It's called cationic emulsions. And as the name suggests, yeah, the latest form of the drop basically incorporates positively charged molecules in the teardrops. And when you instill the eye drops in your eye, because the surface of our eyeball, the cornea, is negatively charged, so the positive-negative interaction will further improve the efficacy and the effect of the medication on your eyes. So I always tell my patients, if you go to the counter and buy artificial tear drops, if you're young patients, even if you put in normal saline, you'll be fine, right? But as you age, your eye become more sensitive. You wear contact lens for long hours, you've got sensitive eyes, you've got other premorbids, like you've got diabetes, you're hypertensive,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
and
right.
then you look at computers, age, history-wise. So the later generation eye drops, basically they are more catered towards preservative-free drops.
Right, so
Yes.
that causes less
Side
natural
effects,
side
yes,
effects. Okay.
because of the preservative they put inside the artificial tears.
Right. So basically, you would recommend getting the ones which are more preservative-free and more perhaps less chemical heavy.
Yes, yes.
Right.
But then it
And-
depends on the nature of your eye condition. If your eye condition is just on and off artificial tears, or simple ones, a multi-dose one would do. Multi-dose means just big bottles you buy over the counters, and if it drops, it's fine.
Right.
But if you have very sensitive eye, very bad eyes, then I strongly suggest you to use a preservative-free teardrops. If your symptoms still don't go away after putting preservative drops, then perhaps there's a time you need to see an eye specialist for further consultation.
Right. And now let's move in from the dry eye typically more towards cosmetic lens wearing. Now this is definitely something which has increased, especially amongst, I would say, younger Malaysians, perhaps the urban Malaysians, and a lot of people actually do not necessarily get their lenses, the cosmetically colored ones perhaps, for different enhancements for the eye from a proper ophthalmologist. They would even be buying it online. They might be buying it from
You're
over
right.
the counter. So what are the dangers of these sort of behaviors? And people just think, okay, I'm just going to be changing my look for now, you know, but what is the long-term impact on the eye itself?
You will go blind. Yeah?
Okay, all right.
9 out of 10 patients who come and see me. Now, what we are seeing, what I'm seeing in my clinic practice are basically just tip of the iceberg, right? Patients who are aware
Those
that
who actually
you can be
come.
treated. Yes, you can be treated. You can see an eye specialist, get it treated properly. So that's what I would say. What I see now is basically just tip of the iceberg. And say out of 10 cases of contact lens related infections, 9 of them is because of color related contact lens.
Right.
Now the problem with the color contact lens is not I'm against color contact lens. If you strictly adhere to the rules, instructions, you use a proper brand, you follow the
Hygiene
usage, the hygiene requirements, you are fine. But the problem with this group of people is normally they buy monthly disposable color contact lens. So they wear it during certain festive seasons or during weddings.
Okay.
And then after they wear it, they put it back in the contact lens solution, and then they keep it for 1-2 weeks. They never change the solution, and then they just leave it for 2 weeks, and then pop another party, and then they wear it back again. And that's when they get infection.
Right. So actually,
Yes.
basically, if you're storing the lenses within that month, you should still be changing the saline
Yes,
solution
yes. So
daily.
therefore, I always tell patients, if you are not wearing a colored contact lens all the time, please use a daily disposable color contact lens. Yes.
Right. And what about those who also quite frequently, they have their cosmetic lenses, but they use it far beyond the prescribed amount of time? Let's say a monthly disposable and you're wearing it constantly for 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yes. Then you also end up having problem with the cornea.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So there's only just really two ways about it. Just be completely hygienic or just don't use them, right?
Even if you completely follow the rules and regulation of wearing contact lens, if you have a sensitive eyes, you are also not tolerant to it. So it depends, individual, you know.
All right. And have you ever had a patient, Dr. Peter, whereby the recommendation from you was eventually do not use your contact lenses anymore and go to using glasses? And would that truly help in the long-term recovery in assisting somebody with dry eyes to get to some kind of normal?
Definitely, if you wear contact lens and you start to develop dry eye signs and symptoms by taking out contact lens, yes, definitely you feel much better. But a lot of times, a lot of these patients are actually ladies, so they want to look nice and pretty. So therefore, they do not like to wear glasses. So therefore, this group of patients, there's always other options of doing some LASIK or some ICL implants to enhance, you know.
Right, so
their
to be
vision.
able to.
Yes.
Now, what about LASIK? I have heard that if you have dry eyes, you're not a suitable candidate for LASIK
So
itself.
therefore, when you say dry eye, you need to quantify how bad is your dry eye.
I
Like
see.
I said, everybody has dry eye. So if you have a very, very mild dry eye disease, you can still go for LASIK. It's fine. But of course, after having doing LASIK, the dry eye signs and symptoms or severity will become worse. And then you need to put more drops to revert back your eye to a normal physiological state again.
Okay, right. So insofar, I think we've been focusing more upon the younger segment of the population, especially those of the working age. Let's talk about older individuals and their problems with dry eye. So let's say, for example, in that sense, you have come from a generation of work whereby you didn't really use computers or devices much. But now,
yes.
perhaps as a retiree or somebody who's
Yes.
staying at home a
Yes.
lot, you may be now suddenly experiencing dry eye because you spend a lot of time on devices, be
Yes.
it the TV screen, the
Yes,
computer
yes.
screen. So what precautions can they actually take?
Yeah. So like you rightly mentioned, there are basically two groups of dry eye patients. First, because of lifestyle and the society needs. The other group, basically the elderly group. Now, this elderly group, basically their dry eye is pathological, right?
Okay.
It's because of aging process. So when they age, everything basically goes down the hill. So tears production from the lacrimal gland comes down. The quality of the tears that have been produced also come down. The nature of their eyelid contour also changes, and their lid margin structures also change.
I see.
So
right.
there are many factors involved in there. So normally treating dry eye disease in the elderly, you got to be more careful. Yeah, yes, and normally these are the group of patients that you need to start them on the preservative-free medication.
All right.
And normally these group of patients will usually they will improve very well with this latest generation tears, artificial tears.
Okay.
Of course, there are some very recalcitrant dry eyes that we need to put in some medication. Yeah, so for example, cyclosporine medication to improve the production of tears from the lacrimal gland. Or in a very severe disease, we need to put in a punctal plug
Okay,
to
what is
retain.
that?
So basically, because the tears in our eye are basically drawn into two pairs of tubes at the corner of our eye.
That's right. the
Yeah.
duct.
So naturally, if the tears continue to flow into our nose, so logic would say that if you plug at the bottom there, you plug the output, yeah, the outflow of the tears pathway, you block it. So therefore, the natural tears that have been produced into your eye, it gets retained for a longer period of time.
Okay.
So
Sort of like
normally
a
this is
reservoir.
yeah, the reservoir. Yes.
Okay.
You plug the outflow.
Okay.
So the tear stays in your eye for a longer period of time.
Right. So
Yes.
all types of options out there.
Yes.
Now, before we end up, Dr. Peter, could you just give us perhaps your top 3 tips for everybody out there listening to keep their eyes healthy? Because as you said, it's only babies who are not affected by it.
Yes. Step number 1, step out of your office.
Okay.
At least once a day. At least once a day. All right. Step 2, drink lots of water. Try not to stay in aircon for too long. Step 3, cut down your TVs and computers.
Okay, right.
There's no other way.
So definitely easier said than done, but
Yes.
thank you so much for the recommendations.
Sure,
you
you're
know?
most welcome.
Absolutely. So thanks for being with us here today, Dr. Peter.
Thank you.
On that note, we hope you learned a little bit more about dry eye disease. I'm Tamina Kauji signing off on The Nation. We hope you have a happy and healthy Eye New Year as well.